Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the US dollar as well as the money supply. If you guys like the content, please subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Now, we've spoken about this before, but we just want to do an update because we are at that same critical level that we reached back in early 2018. Okay? Now, one thing we know is that when DXY was dropping, the US dollar currency index, DXY, when it was dropping from December of 2016 through February, early 2018, generally the price of Bitcoin during that time was moving up, right? So, and it was going parabolic throughout all of 2017, and then it peaked in December. If we go back and look at DXY was around this point in December, and then it ultimately dropped a little bit more by January, February. But for the most part, DXY, throughout Bitcoin's final parabolic move, dropped around 11% or so, around 11%. Ultimately, it ended up dropping around 14%. Now, we spoke about this the other day, back when, or maybe a few weeks ago, back when we were up here, and we were talking about, us getting down to this level, right? This level that we were at back in 2018, and that we just want to keep an eye on it, okay? Now, of course, if you look at the money supply, this is simply not normal, right? I mean, we'll be able to look at this chart for the rest of our lives and say, okay, we were on a pretty well-defined track here, and then all of a sudden the money supply went up, 25%, and arguably from where it should be, it's up around 20% from where it should theoretically be based on the historical trend line. So it's up about 20%. Now, with that in mind, if it's up 20%, obviously the valuation of the dollar anyways, has been dropping. But remember, markets don't always react exactly how you may think. Of course, everyone will give you their interpretation of the market, and also remember that market sentiment can change on a dime. We've said this many times. We covered the S&P back in March, and the risk level was incredibly low, and we were saying, okay, this historically is a time to move into the market. But at the time, a lot of people were selling, and the S&P capitulated. The S&P 500 capitulated significantly back then. And it was essentially unprecedented capitulation for how quickly it occurred because of how quickly it happened. So if you had asked someone back in March if the S&P would be pushing, 3,800 by January, they probably would have laughed at you, because at the time we were just simply dropping like a rock. I think we bottomed around 2,200 or so. So remember, sentiment can change on a dime. Now we know the dollar is where we want to look. Now, obviously, the narrative behind this, it makes intuitive sense, right? It makes intuitive sense that you have the money going up, the money's going up, and therefore, the dollar has been dropping, right? Since March. You can see this started in March. The money supply started going off its trend line in March. So a pretty good note that we can make there, right? So DXY started going down in March. The money supply started going significantly off its trend line in March. Now, the thing is also back then, of course, the stocks were also dipping or crashing because the economy was called into question. Now that we're back down at this level, a lot of analysts will say, and there's no reason to necessarily doubt them, that DXY should continue to drop much further down. I've seen predictions that would take us, a lot further down than where we currently are. Okay, if you look at this as the macro chart for DXY. So, if in fact the dollar drops and continues to drop, then there's a good chance that Bitcoin will continue its move, right? There's a good chance it will continue its move. However, if the dollar puts up a little bit of a fight here, which is where it put up a fight 3 years ago, basically exactly 3 years ago, this is where the dollar took a stand. Let's zoom in so we can really see it. So this is where the dollar took a stand back in January through April, and it was around the 89% to 90% range. That's right around where we currently are. So if the dollar puts up a stand here and is able to turn it back around in the short term, then it would lead me to believe that that could cause this move to come to an end, right? I mean, it could obviously go higher from where it currently is, but eventually it could cause the move to currently end in the short term, if in fact DXY bounces off of this level just like it did back in 2018. Now, I understand there's a lot of ifs and whatnot, and that's purposeful. I'm not claiming I know exactly what's going to happen. I just want you guys to be watching these other charts that you might not normally be watching. So watch DXY, watch the US dollar currency index. If you see it dropping, down to 88, 87, 86, it's probably coming on the back of Bitcoin also moving up. Okay. On the other hand, if you see it bounce, which of course a lot of people are not calling for, which there's been plenty of times in history where the majority of people get it wrong, just like in March. So here, if it does bounce, then we might see some type of pullback. And when the dollar bounces, it doesn't just affect crypto; it would affect a lot of markets, right? A lot of markets would react to this. Generally, when the dollar's going down, the S&P is going up. But if the dollar has a strong bounce, then this going to cause the S&P to dip back down. So we just want to keep an eye on this. We want to keep an eye on this level. This thing moves a lot slower than we're used to in crypto. For instance, this entire window here that we're looking at, right? This took place over 1,078 days. So we're looking at 3 years of time between this bottom here and maybe a double bottom, but we're just simply not sure yet. So 3 years. So we're not going to have a definitive answer on this a day from now or a week from now or 2 months from now. We're going to have to come back to it maybe half a year later and see how things transpired and if the thesis, continues to play out, right? If we come back and find, that DXY bounces, then we'll see if that was where Bitcoin finally turned around. If it doesn't bounce, then maybe Bitcoin will continue its run for weeks to come, right? So this is something we want to keep an eye on. Now, another thing you can look at is the BLX divided by the money supply, which I think is pretty important as well. And this just gives you an idea of how you take into account the increasing money supply into where we currently are. Now, if you look at this, I've also overlaid the bull market support band because it tends to line up pretty well in the same manner. So an area we might want to keep an eye on for this metric is that the bull market support, the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA, span from 0.9 up to 1.03. So to get to those levels, it would mean a pretty significant drop, about a 50% drop to get to the 21-week EMA. Again, we're not saying we're going to go there in the short term. We're just saying that is where the bull market support band is, which again is what we held as support during the last bull market. Clearly, this market cycle is shaping up to be fairly different from prior ones. One of the things we've talked about in one of the Bitcoin, cryptocurrency beauty of mathematics videos is maybe we're going to get a double peak. Maybe it'll be a triple peak. You could argue that this was the first peak, and maybe we're going to have the second peak, and then maybe we're going to have a third peak. We simply do not know yet. But again, I think the money supply and DXY will be key to watch over the coming months to try to get a direction of where Bitcoin may be going in the short term. So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Let's go for 90,000 subscribers. Remember to also check out the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. That'll wrap it up. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.